Everybody knows me, my name is Rhonda Parker. I represent a group called fixAlbion.
Could you address the board, please?
I could, but I'm not adhering. It's my understanding.
Well, we're asking you to address the board,
Okay.
please. It's not a little theater presentation. We'd like you to address the board with your proposal, and
Well,
we would
trust you
appreciate
got a
that.
copy of it, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Mhm.
Slightly revised and just added one more thing. Okay. I represent a group called fixAlbion. I present a proposal to the board that I feel will correct the most common problem the village has with the codes enforcement department at a minimal cost. One time I went to McDonald's and I got a Big Mac that was incorrectly assembled. Buns on buns. Now, it wouldn't have been preposterous if the manager of McDonald's defended the cook by saying, I don't know how to assemble Big Macs, but I asked the cook who made yours, and he said it was done correctly. Believe it or not, this was the same vein of argument we received from Trustee Banker and the mayor when we asked them to investigate the job that Vendetti was doing. Mr. Mayor, how do you effectively manage an employee if you do not know his job? Ms. Baker, how can you intelligently respond to residents' complaints if you do not know building code?
Well, I am not a New York State certified code enforcement officer, or I did not take the civil service exam to be appointed to that position, so that would be my answer. Thank you.
How can
And and I did not take the required 20 hours, at least minimum 20 hours of class a year.
And I didn't expect you to be a code enforcement officer?
Well, in order
Respond to a complaint.
to know a code, I would think I would have to be well versed in it, and I'm not, because I don't use it on a daily basis.
Okay.
Is that clear?
It is clear, but if it's your job to respond to a complaint against code enforcement, how do you propose you're going to do that? Without that knowledge.
Well, we would respond by a procedure that we have in place.
And how do you intend to mitigate risk if your investigation of Vendetti entails nothing more than asking Vendetti if he did anything wrong? In our case, that's what
Is
happened.
this a different proposal than?
Oh, no,
I
it
think
isn't.
so.
It's just my
It's not what I
idea.
thought.
Yeah,
we got
I
here.
don't think it is.
Yeah.
This is just my introduction to it. Just trying
Okay,
to
well, we don't
explain
have all
the
night,
basics.
so if you could move it along, I appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
You know, keep to the point if you can.
Oh, this is the point, sir. Okay, my fixAlbion's proposal for Vendetti Reform requires a little more than commitment of your time. I want a fresh start going forward. I'm not trying to rub your noses in mistakes of the past. Recent FOIL requests shows that there's no record of performance reviews for Ron Vendetti, and if that's true, it's unbelievable. It's untrue, it's a misdemeanor level crime of FOIL. It's clear that anyone who's dealt with Mr. Vendetti with his job performance is entitled to a review. Proposal number 1. The board will conduct monthly reviews of Vendetti in which we fully investigate complaints made by the residents. I have included a definition of fully investigate. The board will establish uniform time frames for building code issues or investigate if these time frames already exist. The board will check if time frames are being applied consistently in all letters sent by code enforcement. For example, some people are given 90 days to paint building, others are given 30. That's proposal number 2, I apologize. Proposal number 3, the board will abolish the use of the time frame of immediately by all other letters sent by code enforcement. As we stated, immediately is just not physically possible. Number 4, the board will allow for sufficient time frames for all matters in which a resident can get a ticket or summons to court. This time frame should allow residents to state their case in front of the board rather than sending meritless issues to court. I know of residents who receive a pool letter or a body of water that does not meet the legal definition of a pool, and I don't think it's fair to waste a resident's time or tax dollars with an issue that can be settled out of court. Number 5, the board will remove the phrasing fines or imprisonment from all notices that are not going to be subject to enforcement of fine or imprisonment. This includes anything not routinely enforced in this manner. They're empty threats that needlessly alarm the public. Further, it makes a mockery of the honorable position of codes enforcement officer. There needs to be a distinguishable difference between serious code issue and petty one. Number 6, we're asking you, Mr. Mayor, to review, fully investigate, and sign off on violation notices sent to individuals who have filed a complaint regarding code enforcement department during a rolling 6-month period. This review should take place before the notice is sent to the homeowner. By now, we've been old friends. I don't have to remind you of the legal ramifications of retaliation. I believe that these notices should be reviewed to assure that violation truly exists and code is not being misapplied. You need to investigate whether code is being selectively enforced. Number 7 is the easy one. An electronic version of the complaint form should be made available online with the option for online submission. This will allow for those who work during the day to access local government and streamline the process, as the emails can be sent directly to department heads as well as the board. And number 8, the newsletter that goes out with water bills can inform residents of their rights to file complaints, speak at board meetings, appeal code issues, and explain the process for doing so. Number 9, Vendetti should be required to publicly respond when asked a direct question in a board meeting. I found that you guys should have been embarrassed by behavior at the last board meeting when a resident answered a simple code question for another resident. You frightened her by demanding to know her name because you were so desperate to find someone who seemingly was backing up code enforcement that you missed the fact that she was answering out of exasperation that Vendetti refuses to respond. You work for the village, all of you do. I want you to act like it. Number 10, Vendetti will get out of his car to inspect work or buildings that he is required to inspect. I know this seems too obvious to mention, but he is notorious for drive-by inspections or not showing up late or not at all. And I think there should be a paper trail signed by the homeowners. This should be a high priority because delayed and missed inspections cost homeowners money, contractors, and in the end, cost our village. Would like to consider ceasing with the petty violation notices about lawn mowing, trash cans, or cars on lawns, or enforce them equally throughout the village. These are by far the majority of the notices that Vendetti sends out, but even they are done selectively and incorrectly. One person can park their car on the front lawn daily and get no violation notice, or another can park for less than an hour to wash their car and get a ticket. Others get violation notices for their neighbor's trash can. There are far bigger problems in this village that need the attention of code enforcement. To avoid selective enforcement, we'd like a past waiver of the right to enforce a certain statute to result in that right being waived until such a time that the board formally votes to enforce that statute. Vendetti routinely picks a target and then searches through the code to try to find a way that he can get them. The code does not allow for personal feelings to dictate who should be considered in violation. And 13, the mayor will have the power to overrule Vendetti. When an investigation shows Vendetti is wrong, not acting in the best interest of the community or selectively enforcing code, the mayor can retract the order. I believe this is a power you've always had, but you've not elected to use it. At one point in time, you said that you agreed with everything Vendetti did to my family. I want to know if you still feel the same way. That's a yes?
I'm not answering that. Yeah, we're going to respond, I think, to your proposal here.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, number 14, residents who have received a violation notice that's no longer being pursued should get a formal written retraction.
Let me answer that. Let me back up. I do agree with whatever it's done and do for the record.
All right, for the record.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure that I put that in the record.
I think it is.
Okay. Number 15, formal time limits for enforcing the prosecution of alleged violations will be established, if not already in existence, and suggested statute of limitations is 30 days after the deadline to remedy the violation. And number 16 is that Vendetti will be required to be in the car provided by the village wearing a codes enforcement uniform and badge displayed whenever he's out of the office on official business. It's essential for the insurance purposes, the insurance that covers the village that we all have to pay for. Yeah. I'm sure they'd like to know when he's on the clock. Likewise, residents need to be able to distinguish between a codes enforcement officer who is at their home on official business and a pervert peeking through the fence. Thank you.